Welcome to Inside Photo Organizing, from DIY to Pro, with Allison Friedman from Arrange Wander Focus of Chicago, Illinois. And I am Susan Wallach from Save a Memory of Northern Colorado. Together, we will provide photo organizing tips and tricks for everyone from the person who wants to do it yourself to other pros in our industry. We'll discuss current software and hardware news about photo and digital asset management. We will be answering your questions, and we hope that as you learn more, you can complete your own photo organizing project and feel more confident to finally know, hey, I can find that special photo that I've been looking for. Here we are again, Allison. Good morning.
Good morning, Susan. Are you all rested up from our conference earlier this month?
I am. You know, it always takes a little bit to come back and reorient yourself as to your projects and life and what's going on and get resituated. So that's mostly what I've been doing.
Same. So we had our the photo managers has a conference every year in April, and this year was just a couple of weeks ago, where we all get together, we learn from each other, we have a good time. A lot of us work alone, so it's very nice to spend a few days with our colleagues. And I always come back with a to-do list of things that I want to develop or look into more, about a mile long. And I feel pretty good if I get a couple of them done.
Exactly. Yeah, all the notes that you take and the people that you meet, your head is swimming with ideas and to-dos. Yeah. Especially when you have great content that's been provided by the speakers and our colleagues, you two included, our guests that we'll announce here shortly. So yeah, it's great. And we've got a virtual conference. So it's sort of a repeat of the live, except it's going to be virtual. So it's another great opportunity for our colleagues to catch the instruction and training that's been provided. Even if you just want to get a 1 day pass and hop in there. So yeah, our association does provide a lot of great training, which is awesome.
Yeah, actually, you saying that made me think we'll put the link to the virtual conference in the show notes. And I don't really expect too many of our listeners to hop in and attend the entire conference, but I believe you can do a snapshot pass for a single class. So, take a look at the schedule. And if there's something that interests you, our guest, who is still nameless, but we'll introduce in a minute, is giving 2 talks. I am also giving 2 talks. And then there's a whole variety of stuff. So if this is something that interests you, take a look at the schedule, which will be in the show notes.
Not that you're overachievers.
Honestly, and I will say this here live on this show, I don't ever want to do 2 talks ever again because it's a lot.
It is a lot. I couldn't believe you were taking on all that, but
yeah, one of them was accidental. Anyway, but today, super excited to have our good friend and Apple guru extraordinaire, Paul Einarsen, with us. And when I say extraordinaire, I am not making this up. He worked at the Genius Bar, and he is the one that I call frequently when I have some esoteric Apple issue. And I know that I could spend X amount of time trying to find the answer, or I can call Paul. So guess what I do? I call Paul. So Paul, welcome to Inside Photo Organizing. And can you tell our guests a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Allison. And Susan, it's great to see you again after 2 weeks, absence. But it was great. It was great to get together at the show, and I have to congratulate Allison for getting the Rising Tide Award, one of the Rising Tide Award recipients for being such a contributor to this whole community of photo managers.
Yes.
It was an honor to be up there on the stage with you. So anyway, welcome to the group. My history is very circuitous. I'm a lifelong photographer. Most of my career was in the commercial printing industry, selling color separations of all things for high-end catalog producers. And that kind of morphed into selling commercial digital photography uh, uh, as commercial studios and web commerce became a big deal. Um, the most immediate and important part of this, though, in my opinion, was the time that I spent working at Apple. I was on the Genius team at Greenwich, Connecticut, when the store opened. I spent about 5 years there, 3 years behind the Genius bar. And then I decided I really love to teach people about the Apple products, the Apple software. And so I moved on to the creative team, doing seminars and hands-on training with the clients. So after a stint there, I realized that there were a lot of things outside or peripheral to the Apple environment that I really wanted to work with people on. And so I left Apple and started my own company, Bluewater Imaging, to do one-on-one consulting, training. I have online courses that I put out there, and also participate more actively in this growing photo management community. It's a fascinating place to be, and what I find particularly interesting is that the kinds of things that I used to deal with in a corporate environment as cutting edge type processes and services, we now deal with on a daily basis. I mean, I have customers who are doing things that we couldn't even do back in the corporate environment. And, I'm sure we'll get into it, but I've found this last year in particular has been a real turning point, I think, for the kinds of things that we can do, the kinds of things that photography is enabling. It's just an amazing time to be a photographer, and I really love helping people get the most out of what they've got in their pocket with
Right.
With their iPhones and so forth. So that's kind of my story.
So what year was that when you created Blue Water Imaging?
I left Apple in it was 2014, roughly 13, 14 was the time that I left there. So I've been Blue Water Imaging has been around for about 10 years, and sort of growing with the industry.
And so there's got to be a backstory to the name. How'd you get your name?
So yeah, I mean, this is one of those things. I mean, like I thought about it, and what inspires me, I realize what inspires me about photography are the places that it takes me. And I'm a water person. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, was always around water, avid sailor. And when I moved to the East Coast, the big break that I would always look for in the year was going to the Caribbean. Some friends and I would go down and charter sailboats. We went to Antigua, we went to St. Lucia, the Grenadines. And so for me, I realized, in fact, if you could see my office here, you would see a picture I took in the Turks and Caicos that's over this desk, and over in the studio, I have a storm shot taken in the Grenadines. I love it. Photos transport me, and Blue Water is kind of the place I want to be transported to.
Nice.
So I figured, if Starbucks can be coffee, Blue Water Imaging can be photos, right?
Of course. No, I love the name. Yeah. Although I can only see part of the picture, I'm sure it's gorgeous.
I'd like to go out there now because all I can say is it was 35 degrees here this weekend and I did not enjoy it. So I would much rather be out on a sailboat in Antigua at the moment.
Yes.
Well, here in Colorado, we had about 6 inches of snow on Saturday, and then we were in the 70s on Sunday.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's our backyard. But well, whenever I hear Paul and I hear that you worked at the Genius Bar, I always want to just say, all right, Paul, tell us what it was like.
Well, I have to tell you, the Genius Bar was one of the best educations I've ever had. The whole Genius experience, and I have to say up front, I really feel like I worked at Apple during kind of the golden years. I mean, this was I started in 2009. I was there for the launch of the iPad. I was there through some of the big launches of as the iPhone was kind of maturing. I mean, it's hard for us to imagine a world now without the iPhone, but it was launched in 2007. Which, all things considered, is not that long ago, and yet now it's a part of all our daily lives. So it was a fascinating time. The culture was really healthy. Steve Jobs, of course, was there, and living through that Steve Jobs period was a really heady thing. It was the store. This store happened to be a standalone store in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is one of the high net worth communities in Connecticut. And it was an old movie theater that they had converted, so it had some cool stuff about it, right? The thing that you learn when you start working for Apple is they have this quiz for everybody. It's like, what do we sell? And of course, all the newbies are saying, phones, communication, creativity, everything. What Apple sells you is an experience, and they're very big about that. It's all about the experience. And it was particularly so back then. So we had latitude at the Genius Bar to really go the extra mile for customers. And that was a huge part of the culture. And I think it still is. But what has changed is, I think has changed. I'm not inside now, and you're either inside or outside with Apple. But my sense is that Apple has grown so much that the core experience that you get working at Apple has gotten diluted a little bit. So the secret to good Genius service is simply that you see so many problems so often. And I think this is kind of it's that 10,000 hour thing that goes around. Apple geniuses, in my opinion, are not geniuses because they just know more. It's because they've done more. And, by the time you see a problem the 50th time, you get really good at diagnosing what's going on and cutting to the chase. And so I think that's really the value of it. So I saw in my time there, I served thousands of customers. The goal was, to see, I think at the time, everything was scheduled on 15-minute increments. So you really had to evaluate quickly and understand what was going on. And then, you either had to, if you had to, you expanded on it and worked out a problem, or it was really clear what the problem was, and you were able to deal with it. But you know, getting that experience was great. And the people at Apple hired were great people to work with. I mean, we had a really nice team. Everybody was, supportive of everybody else. And that was the other part of it is you could, if you saw something that was unfamiliar to you, you could tap somebody else on the Genius team, and almost certainly there'd be somebody who said, "Oh yeah, I saw that before. Here's what you do." So it was a wonderful environment to be a part of, and I think that the quality of the people they chose, the people were vetted primarily on their enthusiasm and their people skills, which again goes to the whole experience. So, Apple's philosophy was you could train anybody. If they were the right kind of person to be customer facing, you could train them to do the technical stuff. And the training program was amazing. I mean, one of the high points in my life was stripping a MacBook Pro down to nothing but wires and putting it back together and hearing that startup chime when I hit the power button. It's like you don't know a feeling of success until you've done that.
Okay. I don't think you want to be telling your family that one of the high points of your life was stripping down and rebuilding this computer.
The high point of my professional life.
Yeah, your career. Yeah.
My career. But I got to tell you, it was pretty sweet.
So stripping down a Mac is a training requirement to be a genius. Is that what you're telling me?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's I mean all the repair stuff is is trained stuff basically. Now, which is probably a way to segue into the conversation that always comes up. Why can't we repair these devices ourselves? That whole conversation. And while I philosophically believe that, I have to tell you that the way these devices are built, it's hard enough for a skilled genius to repair stuff, and the specialized tools that you need and so forth. I think they're just, you really come away appreciating how amazing the technology is. And it, for better or for worse, it's exceptional technology that I just don't repair anymore. I don't bother to repair it anymore because I know the hours that I would spend to get it back into working condition is, just beyond what I want to spend. So anyway, it's cool stuff.
It's pretty amazing what is now packed into, a small phone, a small laptop, a small desktop computer, all the power that's there, all the features that are there. I mean, that's pretty cool stuff. That would have been hard to imagine years and years ago. And even now, you're probably still, I suspect, amazed at the new stuff as it comes out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's it really is. I mean, I really admire what they do. And I do want to say that was one last thing I wanted to mention about the Genius Bar experience. One of the things it teaches you is how important these devices are and how important the technology are to the average person. You don't think about it every day, but what impressed me, the times that I had people come into the Genius Bar who were foreigners, And the only way that they could connect with their family across the world was with this little device. And it wasn't working. And they were desperate because they couldn't communicate with their families or their friends. And literally you were helping them stay connected. It really impressed upon you the importance of how technology, and also the power of it to be able to be far away and connect and do the things we do. And I know, Allison, you've shared more than once about how you go off on your photo expeditions and you're basically doing on your laptop or your iPad all the stuff that it used to take us a whole studio of equipment to do with, over hours, and you can like do it on your lap and have things ready to go. It's pretty heady stuff. So
it is pretty amazing what you can do just with an iPhone, and probably Android too, but this is an iPhone and Apple episode. So that leads me to my next question. Actually, I'm going to roll two into one, but what are some of this is not going to be a, how to use your iPhone episode. You can actually go see Paul's classes for that if you need some more Apple instruction. But what are some of the cool features of Apple Photos? Because that's really what we're going to get into, that people might not know exist. And which of those do you use most when you're using Apple Photos?
As he chuckles.
in terms, I mess around with all of it, I have to say. To me, what I use most, I don't really have a feature that I use most. I just live in the Apple library because it's so easy to manage and get around. I work with other software. I've worked with, I think, pretty much everything out there. And I have to say, for my average daily use, it's just a wonderful environment to be in. It's one of those things. I think it goes back to the Apple experience thing that, you can make a list of features that a photo management database does. And I would bet if you took, 4 or 5 different databases and put a list side by side, you would say that they almost all do the same things, but they do them in different ways, and it's the, pretty much all cars have 4 wheels, but they're different, and they're a different experience. And so I like the Apple experience. It's very easy for me to use. It's admittedly designed for the iPhone, which is always with me, and it works extremely well with the iPhone. So I play with it a lot. In terms of specific things, I think there's 3 things that I think are really worth mentioning that I think are kind of off people's radar. The first is that with the newest versions of really the last 2 versions of Apple Photos, last 2 versions on the iPhone and the current version on the Mac, the duplicate detection is just a game changer. This is one thing that people have wanted for years, that there's this perception that they have a lot of duplicates, and a lot of people do, or they have sequences of photos, just the clutter, how do I manage this clutter? And so now Apple has built this duplicate detection feature into the current versions, and it's really, really good. It had a glitch or two when it first came out, as anything will. But I would advise anybody, if they haven't looked at it or haven't played with it, to do so, because it's unique in that it doesn't when it finds duplicates, it actually will merge all the information from both versions into the best quality image of the pair, or triples or quadruples or whatever it finds, which is wonderful because if you've spent time creating photo albums or albums in photos, and one of the duplicates happens to be in one album and one happens to be in another album, you don't want to lose that organization that you've spent time doing. So in one move, it essentially eliminates the duplicates and it preserves the organization that you've created. And that's very special and very easy to use. So I would recommend people take a look at that for sure.
So let's stay on this for just a second. I know in our Facebook group for the association that there's been, even myself, some confusion sometimes on when does the duplicate finder actually start working? Because if you go and look, it says it's still finding and it needs to be closed. Could you elaborate a little bit about that and clear up some of the misunderstandings? Like, I thought it maybe had to be a system library. I thought that it had to be connected to the cloud, meaning you had to have iCloud on so that you're, backing up. So can you tell us what is the best way to approach a library to get it to show up those dupes?
Sure. First of all, I want to, I'm sure there are listeners who are both in the professional community and consumers, everyday users of Apple Photos. And it's important to understand that Apple designed Apple Photos for a world without photo managers. In fact, they didn't exist back when Apple Photos started. And my sense is that, they're trying to create a do-it-yourself environment for their customers. And I get that, and I'm thrilled that they do that. Because of that, Apple is not as concerned, or it's probably better to say they have to prioritize processes, okay? Because everybody complains when things don't happen quickly. So if if you're swiping your photos and it starts getting janky, you're going, this iPhone's like terrible or whatever, and so there is a low barrier to frustration, I find, with Apple Photos. Everybody has their frustration with it. But the common thread, I think, is how smoothly it works. So here's Apple. They want to design something that does all these cool things, but they have a certain amount of power that is built into the device, and it can only do so much at once efficiently. Even for Apple, it can still only do so much efficiently. And so there are certain processes like duplicate detection, facial recognition, syncing sometimes when it's talking to iCloud. All of these things are considered background operations, which is one of the reasons that they always suggest you plug in power and lock the screen on your device at night, because then when nothing else is going on, it can sit there and it can pick up these tasks that it kind of didn't have time to do because you were busy showing photos to your friends and doing all this other stuff, right? So the things like duplicate detection, which to do it well, and I think this feature works really, really well. To do it well, you have to think about the number of parameters the device has to figure out in order to say, yes, this is a duplicate, or no, it's not. Or this is, these aren't really duplicates, but they're really, really close, right? And it will do that. at the same time, it's also scanning all the faces. It's like doing all this other stuff. And then consider that, when I started back in 2014, a 30,000 image library was a pretty darn big library. Now we're seeing, 100,000 plus, without
Oh,
a
yeah.
without a hitch, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm sure, we could do a who's seen the largest library quiz here and
I think we've done
so
that
forth,
before.
could be. But the point is that we're asking more and more sophisticated technology, which is a long way of apologizing for the fact that this stuff doesn't always happen as quickly as we would like. And I think that this is especially true for photo managers, because as a photo manager, your whole thing is you're trying to save time for clients, make things efficient, and all these things. And Apple Photos is not designed for that. It doesn't, it would be wonderful if there was like a hidden boost button that, as photo managers, you could say, I want to do this. But there isn't, that I know of. So I have to say that patience is probably the best tool you have for some of these operations. And they are going to happen more or less quickly, given the device, given the library, given the quantity. And as of now, I really don't have a better answer. I think that the advancements with the chip technology, and now that Apple is making its own silicon, they get to create better efficiency and faster processing and all these sort of things. And my hope is that this will improve. But for the time being, I think it's really, just be calm, take pictures.
Yeah, I understand that. So hopefully we've given our listeners some tips. I liked, when you're a photo manager, you're not able to put their libraries on your phone, right? That doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're working with our clients' libraries, we're working with them on computers, and that sync process again has a lot of variables to keep in mind, right? So patience,
Absolutely.
I can't tell you how many times I've said, just need to have a little more patience, let it sit there. But people don't have, we're so in the, gotta have it now moment. I think that's what, social media is, immediate gratification and all that kind of stuff. So letting your Apple library churn for 3 or 4 days before you open it back up is probably the best advice.
Yeah, and actually, you bring up a really good point, Susan, that not everybody grasps, is that Apple is huge on privacy, which means that their whole thing is making all of these devices do their own processing. So you can go through and do processing, face processing, or duplicate processing, whatever, on your Mac, which is typically more efficient, and it will transfer a certain amount of that process and identification to your other devices. But most of that process has to then be duplicated on the other device. It's device independent. So they're very big about trying to keep stuff out of the cloud as much as, people think otherwise. There's a lot of personal, a lot of safeguards, encryption, and this and that goes into the Apple universe. I was literally, this may come up later, but I was just watching a announcement of Apple's just announced AI platform. And the thrust of it is they say it tests out better than the other stuff that's out there, Chat GPT and Chat GPT 5. But it is all device dependent. It happens on the device, which is important because it's not, it's not going out to servers where it could, get co-opted for other things.
Right.
But it also means now there's even more stuff that's going to be happening on the device, which undoubtedly is going to have some kind of impact on performance.
It's probably why Apple wants you to update your phones more frequently. I have a 13
Yeah.
and it's still working really well, so I haven't bothered to update it, but it's true because you need the extra processing power. So we could go down these other tangents and maybe we will, but when I asked you about features, you actually said you had 3 and duplicates was number
Yeah.
1, so I don't want to lose the other 2. So could
Thank you.
you go back and give
Sure.
us the number 2 and number 3?
Sure. Number 2 is iCloud links, which is a great way to transfer photos and videos to other people to share them. For a long, long time, people have depended upon shared albums to share with family members and so forth. And shared albums is good up to a point, but it is intended simply as a web sharing vehicle, basically. And when it comes down to, hey, can I get your photos so that I can make a photo book? Or, I really want to have the originals, or, something like that. There hasn't been a really clean way to do that. iCloud Links changes that because it actually is what you're doing on your phone or on your Mac is you're making a list of the photos that you want to share. And what you're doing is you're telling iCloud to go into the iCloud database and pass those photos off to a third party or to a second party, any party. And what's neat about it is, number one, you are assured of getting the full original image. So, that's a win. You get the metadata that's associated with that. So, here again, if you spent some time cataloging things or adding locations or anything else, you get those as well. And when because it's a link, it essentially is a download link. It can go to a Windows user, an Android user. It's easy to pass around. And when they get the link, which you can just paste into a message or an email or something like that, when they click on the link, it actually launches this kind of gallery page. That's pretty neat. So they can see what it is that they're being sent. They can choose to download all of them or just ones that they want. And they can choose to either download it to their desktop or download folder, wherever they download stuff. Or if they have their own iCloud account, they can have it added directly to their photo library. So it's really a wonderful way to go. It doesn't clutter up people's email with attachments or messaging and so forth. So I think, what I try to tell my customers is, think about the purpose of what it is you're doing. If you simply want to share a visual of something and say, hey, this is what we did, shared albums are great. And even some attachments to messaging is fine. But if you really want to share the actual photo file, then I think iCloud Links is killer. And it shows up on the Mac. It shows up in the share menu as an option. Actually, same thing on your actually on the iPhone. you have to hit share and then scroll down a little bit. You'll see an iCloud link option there. So that's
Yeah,
that. And then
that's actually a feature I use a lot.
oh,
Especially if
cool.
you, yeah, especially, if you, like I said, usually if it's, I want to share the full size photo, but also if there's a
Mhm.
lot and I don't like shared albums, I don't really use them. I don't like when people share them with me. I find them annoying. I'm probably in the
Mhm.
minority on that, but I do like the link because it's sort of a one and done. And I believe it disappears. It's only active for a certain amount of time too.
Right.
So,
It's 30 days,
yeah.
Oh, 30 days.
basically.
So
Yeah, it's 30 days.
when you select several images and you say, create now iCloud link, then it'll group
Mhm.
those several images because I've not used it.
Yeah.
So that's my question.
Yeah.
And then if you shared one file at one point and then you created another shared link with three more images and that creates a different link, right? People aren't going to see that other one image because
No,
all these share links are unique,
yeah.
right?
It's
Yeah.
it's a unique link.
Okay.
Yeah. You can share up to 1,000 images, and they're available for 30 days.
And will it let you
And
do
then
that with video? Because some shares don't do video.
yeah, it does video too.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
that's a good benefit there when you want to
Yeah.
share a
Yeah.
full video with someone.
Hmm. Yeah, it's pretty nifty. So again, if you're traveling and people want to group it, share everything together, it's a great way to do it.
All right. What's number 3?
Number three, number three is memories. Um, Memories just got an update. I don't know. I like these memory pop-ups because I find that it's showing stuff that a lot of times I've forgotten, and I almost certainly don't think of them in the context that the memories pop up as. I suspect this is also something that AI is going to add even more value to. But the memories, you can create a widget on your home screen so that of your phone, so that when you open it up, you get this little surprise pop up, this day, in history kind of thing or whatever. They're a lot of fun. And I show it to clients and they love them as well. But the change that just happened is they've made the memories module editable. So when a memory pops up, a lot of times I get a memory pop up and there'll be one random photo in there that it doesn't kind of fit the thing, but you have the option to save these memories so you can go back and sort of view them on demand. The fact that you can now edit and remove photos or add photos to a memory and then save it as a favorite is pretty nifty. You can also share it now. So you can, create this little doodah, and you can choose from music in your music library. You can customize the photos, and you can save it and you can share it. So it's kind of a slideshow light, I guess I would call it. And I think it's fun, and I think a lot of people see the memory part of it pop up, but they don't go any deeper into it.
Excellent. Okay. So you have all of your photos stored in Apple Photos, and you're enjoying your memories and sending your links. How do you back that up? Because we're big on backup in this show. We mention it probably every single podcast, I think. How do you back up your Apple library? Or is it already backed up because you're using iCloud? Talk to us about that.
Sure. So first of all, I recommend and I use Time Machine for my computers. So I have a computer that is syncing originals from iCloud, and that computer is backing up to Time Machine, which, to be honest, is like the simplest, most straightforward way to back up your photos. It's a small, small drive. You can get a adequate drive for under $100. Even if you only plug it in once a week, it still is. It's easy. It's secure, and what's wonderful about it is that it creates a history of what your computer looked like. So should you accidentally delete something, you can go back and recover the media as it was before you deleted it, which I think is a huge thing. In general, though, when I started down, with computers, a backup, and technically a backup is simply a copy. So I tell people that if you're using the iCloud ecosystem, you are backing up your material automatically. And, there's debate about the terminology, in the photo managers. But in my mind, a backup is a backup because, any copy of your material is a backup. Because I had serviced so many people who, their phone, that somebody pushed them in a swimming pool, their phone was shot, and they had to buy a new phone and download their information, and it was all there. They didn't lose anything, right? I had clients come in that had a lightning strike on their house, and it fried every computer in the place, and they were able to recover from it. So the argument that people come up with is, if you delete a photo on your phone to save space, all of a sudden you realize, hopefully all of a sudden, you realize you deleted the photo from every place else too. And that doesn't, in my mind, that doesn't minimize the fact that you have backed up your photos. It really just comes down to an understanding of how the whole system works. So the fact that I have all of my devices synced up, I basically have my photo library backed up, 3 or 4 times. And if I delete something, I pay attention to the little pop-up that says, you're going to delete this off of all your devices. And I believe it. And I think that's the thing. I think, to your point, Allison, I think, we've all become so, or Susan, I guess, speedy in what we do. We are moving very quickly. We don't always pay attention to the alerts and so forth. And something like Time Machine will give you some comfort that, there's a second tier backup for your devices. But I think today, at the consumer level, pretty much everything is backed up in some way, and it's essential that you do. I think the people who are most at risk are the people who keep everything on their phone. It's not backed up manually or synced through a cloud service. Those people, are at risk for losing stuff, and I really encourage them to do something. It doesn't matter what, but to be aware of the whole backup issue, because I have seen lost libraries, lost photos that people really, really, wished had been backed up.
I want to back up. I just want to make sure that it's very clear. Two points, because you said this, but it was a little bit quick. So I want to make sure people catch it. With Time Machine, it's only going to back up your Apple Photos library if you are downloading originals to your Mac, so that it has something to actually back up. right? It's not going to back up the
Correct.
optimize. So that is a setting
Right.
that you can do on your Mac. Go into your Apple Photos settings and click download originals. If you have
Yes.
space on your computer, then Time Machine will back it up, because I think that's a point that a lot of people don't realize. So you had said it,
And
but
yeah, yeah.
I didn't want it to
No,
get lost.
no, that's a good point. So everybody should be aware that when syncing happens, most systems offer two options for syncing. They will either sync a an optimized version that's a smaller, sort of a preview size of the original image, or they will sync the original image itself. And you know, this is if you're not tech savvy, that's an easy mistake to make. But I think that it really is an important one. And I think a way to think about it is we're really kind of in the tech real estate game. In other words, we're buying space is what we're doing, and it's really important that when you're buying a new iPhone or you're buying a new laptop in particular, it's important to really pay attention to the space that you're buying, because space, the hard drive space or solid state drive, whatever you want to call it, is more important than a lot of people realize. And it's also the first thing that they want to save money on, because they don't perceive the value of it. We as photo managers,
or their necessary growth. People don't realize that once they get this
exactly.
device, all of a sudden they love it and they use it for everything under the sun, and they run out of space.
Exactly. I think you guys would probably agree that one of the common calls you get is someone who's run out of space and
Yeah.
has either lost
Yeah, that actually brings me
yeah.
to the second point I wanted to make sure was very clear. And you also said
Mhm.
this, so I'm just want to make sure it's out there.
Yeah.
But we have all had people come to us saying, well, my phone was running out of space, so I deleted a whole bunch of my photos because I knew they were in iCloud, but now I can't find
Right.
them.
Right.
So it is, there's a couple levels there. If you have backed it up with the originals on your Mac via Time Machine, you can always go back and find them there. But you do have to remember that you can't create space on your phone if you're using Apple and Apple iCloud by deleting your photos, because all you're doing is deleting your photos. You can
Right.
check your phone settings and making sure that your phone is only holding optimized versions.
Mhm.
But that is a limitation, so that if you have a very big photo library and you're running out of space on your phone, you either have to come up with a different solution, export them out of
Mhm.
Apple or whatever, or buy a phone with more space. But deleting them out of
Right.
Apple Photos is going to delete them from your library. So as much as you get that little pop-up that says, are you sure you want to delete these? I can't even tell you the number of people have said, oh yeah, I know, but they're just saying delete it from my phone, not from
That's
my
what
Yeah.
they're
Right.
that's what they're thinking in their head, but the reality is
Yes.
they're deleting it from their entire library system across all their devices.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
just wanted to make sure those two things were out there, and then I'm going to move us along a little
Yeah.
bit, because I mean we can talk to you for hours, but we need to keep this a little bit
Yeah.
aligned. But you gave a really interesting talk at our conference, which I admit that I was talking at the same time, so I couldn't hear it. But you and I have talked about this many times, and I look forward to hearing it on the virtual. But about the idea that photo management, and I don't mean that in necessarily the sense of what photo managers do, but more in the sense of how everybody keeps their photos now, is
Personal.
moving personally, yes,
Yes.
moving more towards a database system and away from the traditional folders that you can go to your Mac or your PC and open up Finder and see, okay, top level folder is called photos. And then you have 2024, 2023, 2022. And you were discussing at conference how we're really moving away from that and into a database model. So can you talk to us about that? Why do you think that? Where are we going? Give us the future.
Well, there's two things. The first is that I think we have already moved away from that, because even the Milio is an example that people may know of a photo database. And when I say photo database, I'm basically saying, it's an application that speaks photo, for lack of a better way to put it, and is managing a photo collection, okay, and does various things with it. It's Photos, Apple Photos is a very well managed photo database, in that it eliminates the extra stuff that we used to have to deal with, okay? And part of that extra stuff are these folders that we, back in the day, we would all create our year, month, and maybe put a vacation in there or something like that. And that was sort of our foundation for our photos. And over time, we started using other software that did other things. It actually let us look at those photos. It let us edit those photos. It let us do some other things. In a practical sense, as we have wanted to do more things with our photos, we want to share them. We want to have them backed up. We want to do some other things. We want to move them around. We want more folders than we can easily create. We have more years than we used to. I used to have a 15-year window of folders, and now I would have to have whatever, I'm embarrassed to say, in order to cover all my photos. It's too much work. I don't want to do that. And in the world of digital photography, the way that digital files work allows a database to do all of that stuff for us. So it's kind of the difference between a stick shift or an automatic, right? It's like, most people have opted for the automatic. So what happens is we're kind of on this cusp where an application like Milio, or a professional example would be Lightroom. They're still addressing and they're still accessing a folder structure that exists on the desktop, in the Finder, or in the Windows Explorer. But the truth of the matter is, we never really go there. I mean, it's kind of a comfort thing to say, oh yeah, they're all fine. I can go there. I can do stuff. But the minute that a client, in our case, or someone goes in and messes around with those, they've now broken this environment that they love to play in the database. So in a practical sense, the folder structure doesn't really matter anymore, because we don't actually use it. Again, it is a comfort kind of thing. In the case of Apple Photos, there actually is a folder structure that represents that, but it's hidden within the Apple Photos library. And fine, we can still see the years, we can see the months, we can see the albums that we created. They're all there, but they're just created in this kind of virtual way that now essentially everybody else has done as well. But instead of being managed within the file, they're sitting out there, I would say exposed in the Finder. So from that point, we're already getting used to it. In fact, we have a whole new generation of photographers now who are used to app-driven photos. That's how they learn to do photos. It's in the app. They know it's in the app. They want their photos. That's where they go. The other thing is, if we are going to share them or we're going to export them, we don't go to those folders to grab them to share them. We do it out of the app because it's more efficient and it gives us more clarity in what's going on. So I think that that's why I call this kind of a post-folder world. I think, in my mind, the argument for folders always was a response to the iPhoto to Photos debacle. Is one of the things that Apple did not handle very well. It was not a smooth transition between the two. And as a result, a lot of people, when iPhoto was discontinued, were desperate to get their pictures out of iPhoto before it, quote, was shut down. And that kind of started this whole conversation of, you don't want anything in proprietary software. It's dangerous. You're going to be stuck. You'll never get it out. Well, first of all software is proprietary. A proprietary software, easy for me to say, proprietary software is simply an experience. It's a set of tools. It's a set of features that provides a certain experience. And that's true of all software. So everything that we use is really proprietary, even the Finder for that matter. But now we have the addition of artificial intelligence, which adds a whole nother layer and a whole nother set of capabilities on what we're doing. So if ever there was a time when the folders became irrelevant, this is it. Because artificial intelligence is going to shape what we do.
And how we
forward.
do it.
And how we do it. Exactly.
Right. Well, and it's not like AI just was invented last year. Like some people are thinking,
right,
where has this been all my life? Well, actually, it's been around for quite a while. So the moment that all these softwares like Google Photos, Amazon, Apple, once you were able to start doing facial recognition, that's AI, right? Once you were able to type in dog in the search and pull up all the photos of your dog, that's AI. So, AI has been integrated and has been learning and growing in these apps for years now. And it's reached a pinnacle or a peak in that now you have this language learning application of it where you can ask it questions once you've fed it information is mind-blowing, right? So where do we go from there?
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see what AI, how Apple distributes AI.
I think one thing that people don't realize is that they have been using a lot of those features for a while. And one of the things people have always loved about Apple Photos and why it was such a pioneer is this database issue. So that, if you wanted to go in and search for all the photos of your dog and do it by folders, that does not work. But if you want to do it in your Apple Photos, and Google and Amazon, they all do the same thing. Or if you want a map view, or if you want, all of those different views, even just your favorites, right? So how would you deal with favorites in folders? Well, do you pull them out of their chronological folder and stick them somewhere? Whatever.
Copy.
You make a copy, right? And this is why we're all in business, because people have been making these copies for years, and now they come at you with like 10 terabytes worth of copies, and we need to sort through it. But there is a disconnect there, to your point, Susan, about the AI, in that Apple's been using it. All these, Google, they've all been using it forever. It's just different purposes now. but also the database thing. And I will say that I do wish Apple, I understand why they don't, but I do wish Apple had made their folder structure a little bit easier as a photo manager, because if we have to go into that back area, it's all gobbledygook. You can't find anything.
But that's the
but that's
purpose.
not their purpose. And actually,
Yeah.
they don't want people going back there because you're going to muck it up,
Right.
generally speaking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're going to mess with the links that the database needs to find that file. It's not meant for human eyes. That's what I tell people. When you're working with a database, when you look at the raw data that it's accessing, it's not meant for human eyes. It's meant for the program to sort that out. It's kind of like if you were to see the bits, the ones and zeros on a hard drive, that is being created when you save something, it would not make sense to the human eye, and it's not meant to be. You need that arching software to do its work to interpret the data. So
they're protecting us against ourselves.
exactly.
they do make our job as a photo organizer a little harder sometimes, but I would say that, it works for that product. Apple, like you said, is an experience. And they want, in order to keep that experience viable, they have to keep people from going under the hood.
Yeah.
I think. And Apple has some of the best. I know it has incredible facial recognition. I believe they are the only ones that have pet facial recognition, which, all my memories that come up are literally you and your dog in the woods, you and your dog at the beach, right? Those are all my memories. I do have children, but the dog features a little bit higher. But Apple's actually able, they introduced pet facial recognition, 6 months, that the time frame is probably slightly off, but not super long ago. I don't know anyone else that does that, but that's a database function. That's not a folder function. Again, you can't go back through and find them in your folders.
Right. And I think, so this is sort of the culmination of that conversation, which is that the way we consume pictures has changed. So that when I started, it was all about the picture, right? We were scanning, we were preserving, and so forth. But essentially, there were three ways that people looked at pictures. Four, if you count slideshows on Christmas Eve. But either they were 4x6 prints, or they were up on the wall, or they were with your grandmother sitting on the couch in a photo album, right? And it was all about the picture. Now there are so many ways that we consume photos, and we have, not everybody loves live photos, but live photos are kind of cool for a certain thing, right? There's burst photos. There's, now you can take a spatial video on an iPhone 15 that will play on these Vision Pro headsets. Now, I took some of those at the conference, and five years from now, when we're gathering for the conference and we have our own little Vision Pros, we can actually see in 3D what the conference looked like way back in 2024, right? My point is that as far as handing our photos on to our families, the assumption was always they're going to want photos. That's not really true anymore. What they're going to want is the experience that they're used to viewing those photos now. So my argument is, which is more valid these days? Archiving a selection of photos in folders, or archiving an entire Apple Photos library with all the preserved links and relationships that are built into it. Exactly.
Yeah.
I would actually say both, but because technology changes too much. But
yeah.
Right. But then the question becomes, is distilling everything to a JPEG the right answer? I'm not sure anymore.
Well, I
know?
guess it's, everybody has to figure out, because nobody wants my 70,000 app, photos in my Apple photo library. And, there's 25,000 photos of my cats and dogs. They want to see themselves. My nephews want to see them growing up in my photos. Maybe they want to see my parents. Maybe they want to see other family members. They don't want to see my cruise photos. They probably don't want to see, some of that other stuff. So I think handing off an entire photo library is probably needs to be determined family to family, like if they're not on the Apple ecosphere, that's going to be awkward, right? So,
But what if you said, well, they could just ask the AI avatar to show a edited version of your life. Show us Susan's life story in 100 photos or less.
yeah, that would be cool.
That's coming, I
I
am
mean,
sure. There's
Right.
there's
yeah,
no way
I
that's
mean,
not coming. Yeah.
Right.
exactly. So anyway, it's a fascinating time. I think, I sort of view our role as photo managers, as tour guides to this whole thing, because it is changing. And, I'm eager to see what happens at Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference in a month and a half, because we are at this point where it's a really interesting and quickly changing environment.
It is exciting. I want to see where the Vision Pro goes, really. I think there's a lot of potential for that, but they've got to get over some hurdles. So
Yeah, it's a version 1.
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to segue us very, very terribly to our last question, just because we've taken up a lot of your time today. This is probably our longest podcast yet, I think. So we're just going to go right to the end, and because we have to ask everybody, and you haven't shown us anything about your own library or shared anything really about your own library yet. So, what is the strangest photo in your collection? And we know you're stored in Apple, of course, so you should have been able to find it very quickly.
Well, so I have to say, strange is kind of a loaded word, since
Yes,
I take a lot of strange pictures, for creative and otherwise. I thought about that, and I have to say, the one that always comes to mind when people ask me about this, which is strangely pertinent to this whole discussion, is a day I used to commute by train down to Greenwich when I worked at the Apple store. And this one day I got on the platform, and there was me and this pigeon standing on the platform waiting for the train. Looked like it was waiting for the train. And there's something about that just seemed like, I don't know, very memorable to me. So it's not that strange, but
Wait, is the photo a selfie of you and the pigeon on the train platform,
it's
or it's just the pigeon?
It's a picture of the pigeon on the stand back from the edge sign. So not very dramatic, but very thought provoking.
Well, we use the word strange purposefully, and everybody interprets it slightly differently. So it gives us, yeah. I would have liked to have seen a selfie of you and the pigeon, though, if you had that.
Yeah, no, I'm not a big selfie person. Although,
I know.
Yeah.
Well,
efforts to the contrary.
Well, Paul, this has been just a lovely discussion. I love picking your brain. I don't get to do it as often as Allison probably does, but I feel like it's nice to have you as a colleague with your vast knowledge and your reassurance of how things always are going to evolve with Apple and, improve our lives along the way, because I think, their goal is to keep it simple for people. And, they just want these devices to work for people. They don't want you to have to learn the inner workings. So they want it just to work. And I think, if people are, what I used to say to people, I grew up with PCs my entire career until about 2005, when I bought the huge Mac cheese grater, Mac, whatever they call that. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That model?
Oh yeah.
I love that because
Mac Pro. Yeah.
Yeah, I could take out the side, and every time I was running out of hard drive space, I had like 400 or 500 gigabyte hard drives in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that rang all my bells.
I've got 2 of those that are ends of my coffee table downstairs.
Well, mine's still running downstairs, and I use it when people give me really, really old things that that I need to open. I have a very old Windows box running Windows 95 that's got a floppy, and then I've got that cheese grater. But that was my introduction into the Apple world. And after that, I never looked back. But I had to keep living in the PC world because that's where most businesses are. And most people who have PCs at home did it because they have a PC at work and that's what they know. But I challenge people that maybe, if you're frustrated with the Windows environment and you want something a little different and allows your creativity to come out a little bit more, is to check out the Apple devices. And if you have an Apple iPhone, you're already one step closer to having more Apple devices to make your life simple, when you're sharing information across different platforms. Yeah. I tell people if you get a Mac, you'll never look back. So
that's probably true. Wow. I was in the same world. I've had an iPhone for a long time, but I had to be PC based. And was actually I have PCs here as well, but I do most of my work now on the Mac just because everything is just easier. It just works. So I think you're right, is their whole experience idea is really what they're selling. Yep. Just make it work and make it easy. And they do that very, very well. So as do you, Paul. So thank you so much. And we will drop the information about your business. And I encourage people to check out the classes that you have available on your site, because I have some of them and they are so well done. And if you want to learn more about how to get the most out of your Apple devices, Paul is the one to go to for sure. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. Very, very good training. I think I own them all.
All right. Take care. It's been lovely being here.
Wonderful. Thanks. That's it for our show today. Remember, you can find this episode on all of your favorite podcast apps. Be sure to click follow so you can stay up to date with the latest in photo organizing. We'll catch you next month.